Hello everyone, welcome to Book Club Preview. Today we're looking at the story of more, and we're starting part 2, Food, and chapter 5, Growing Grain. Now this chapter is really long, and there's a lot of vocabulary words, so let's just hit this hard and fast. First, the author talks about the Heartland, which is kind of this Midwest part of America, where there's a lot of farms, a lot of crops, a lot of flat ground, and where a lot of our food is produced. And she talks about how she was born and raised there. And she kind of talks about, where do you call home? Eventually when she dies, she wants to go back to her hometown and be buried in that cemetery. And, there's people live in cities, people live in farms. What do you consider home? She considers her small town in Iowa her home. She talks about how in the last 50 years that the size of farms haven't increased around the world, but the amount of food that those farms produce, the yield that they produce, has increased, I think, 3 times, she says. And so over the last 50 years, we're producing more and more food than ever before. She continues on and says, okay, well, what are some of these reasons? Well, we fertilize food better than ever, okay? We provide irrigation to food, that's providing water to our farmlands more easily. And then, of course, we use pesticides to keep things from growing that we don't want to grow, or to keep things from eating our food that we don't want to eat them. And so because of these 3 things, we're growing a lot more food in that limited space. And she even says, I thought this was pretty crazy, that if you had a basketball size field that produced 1 bushel of corn, okay, that was 50 years ago. Now you just need 2 parking spots to produce 1 bushel of corn. So if you imagine that basketball size court, maybe that's like 50 cars could park there, maybe 30 or something. But that's 30 bushels compared to what it used to be. Wow. There's also other reasons why we've been able to get a higher yield of crops, from selective breeding, right? Using the crops and finding the healthy ones or the delicious ones and helping them have babies. And that was actually discovered from a monk many years ago. And so we started doing that and creating healthier, better, bigger crops. But then technology got involved, and we started using genetically modified organisms, or transgenic, sorry, there should be a T there, transgenic. Okay, yeah, I think I did spell it right, transgenic. Of being able to change the DNA of crops so that way they can be stronger, that way they can resist certain things. And it's actually pretty crazy because the author starts to talk about this pesticide called Roundup, and it has another name for it, the chemical name, but this is a really popular weed killer. And so you can spray it on the ground and it keeps things from growing. She says it has like this red light for growth. So you spray it and things can't grow and they even die. But the same technology that creates this GMO plants is also the same company that creates this pesticide Roundup. And so now there's this really crazy partnership to where before, when you used this chemical Roundup, you had to be very focused where you put it. But now the new seeds that they're creating, it can grow even when it's sprayed with this pesticide. So these are special, they say green light seeds, so that way they can grow even when you spray Roundup everywhere. So now you can just spray the pesticide anywhere and your crops will still grow. And so the amount of Roundup being used in farms is just gone crazy high. And there's also this really sad link between the use of Roundup and getting cancer. And so farmers who are using Roundup a lot are at higher risk of getting cancer from this chemical. She also notes that these GMO seeds, they are controlled by the companies that use them. So if this company, Manada or something like that, it has this special seed, and it can sell it to only people that it wants to sell it to, or at whatever price it wants to sell it to. And that technology, that genetic code is theirs, and they keep it, which is pretty crazy. Okay, next she talks a little bit about Iowa and how Iowa is like farm country and will always be farm country, okay. But she talks really interesting about certified organic. Certified organic is a system of farming that is more concerned with the yield, or the health of the soil rather than the yield of the crops. And so it's thinking about long-term sustainable farming. So they don't use pesticides as much, but they use like ladybugs or falcons or hands to take out weeds, rather than chemicals and things. They still use chemicals and pesticides, but maybe a special branch. And then also she notes that organic doesn't actually talk about the food itself. It's more about the soil. So the fruit could have just as many pesticides as a GMO fruit, but in general they usually have less. So I don't know what that means. You might still want to wash it. Okay. And then she gets into corn. Oh my goodness. Corn, a lot of corn is grown. Okay, it's crazy. But the funny thing with corn is nowadays, only about 10% of the corn that is grown is actually for eating. I think 45% of it is for regrowing corn, 10% is for eating, and so that leaves another like 40% that, what do we do with it? Well, that's what we're going to learn in the next chapter. All right, a lot of vocabulary words here. Some of them I had to look up because, man, she just used weird vocabulary. Girth, that's in part 2. Girth is like big, heavy, whoa, great, large. Rudimentary means very basic, very elementary. Rudimentary math, 1 plus 1, things like that. And the education in Iowa or Minnesota or whatever is very rudimentary, low level. She learns later on. Darn well. Darn is kind of a nice way to say damn or dang. Darn, which in this case means very well. Sulked is like being sad. This action of being sad. Sullen is more of the feeling that people can observe. They're both very closely related. Going to the hospital back and forth, she would, oh, I don't want to go. Sulk and sullen. Subsumed, which I had to look this one up. I imagine like consumed, eating, combining. Subsumed is like gathered, included, or covered. In the summertime, the summer subsumed. It covered or included everything in the farm life. Bedfellows were like friends, which is a really weird word, but maybe back a long time ago, friends probably slept close together a lot more often, for heat, for warmth, for comfort, for safety. And so maybe a bedfellow is someone that you trusted to actually sleep next to. But in this case, we don't use it very often, but it means friend. Silo is a huge building that's empty, and you put like foods or grains inside that container to store them. Combines, this is not combine, combines, yes, is a machine that does something on a farm. I don't know if it's like destroying crops and gathering them, but it's like some giant machine used in farming. You could actually Google that, or we can Google it together and just look at the different pictures of these combines. I don't know what function they have exactly, but it's huge farm tractor equipment. Slathered is covered. Um, I think of maple syrup in my family. My wife is Korean and they don't like a lot of sweet things, so just use a little bit of maple syrup on her pancakes or French toast. And I consider myself not using that much either, but when she looks at me and I'm pouring all this maple syrup on my French toast and just slathering my pancakes or French toast or whatever in maple syrup, just covering too much or with greed. Blithely means kind of happily or carefree. Morse code is a system of communicating with the dot sounds, beep, 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 long and short sounds. Wonderkind, she uses this kind of, I think, German spelling of wonder to show like this magical or this amazing GMO seed, this new technology, wonderkind seed. Divvied, this is like separated or spread out. If we're in a team together and we get a prize, maybe a prize of money, we separate it, we divvy it out to each person equally. Maw is a mouth, but it's more like a kind of imagination connotation to it. Ancillary, I'm not actually sure how to pronounce that, but that just means secondary or secondary, auxiliary. She talked about the use of corn when we originally grew it was for food, but now eating corn or shoving it into our maw is ancillary, is secondary. It's only 10% of the use of corn. It's just like a part of the reason. The other is for other uses. Okay, and my discussion question is in this whole chapter, which is really long, which part of the chapter disturbed you the most? Which was the most like, oh, I can't believe that? Of course, please make your own discussion question. That is all the time that we have for today, but thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Book Club Preview. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.